Whoa. I'm somehow logged in as Counselor Collet. So I don't know if you can rename me. Yeah. So.
Oh, I know. So.
Thank you.
Yes. No.
I think I'm not.
There.
Or I don't know if there's a problem on that side. Let me know. Otherwise, I'll just. But it's.
You're not logged in.
Yeah, I can't
right?
see you.
Should have looked sooner, but wasn't. If I just. Okay.
All right. So we got the audio, the meeting started. Mayor, if you're,
6. Okay.
I think we're good to begin.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Alex. We're going to call the Talent Urban Renewal Agency regular meeting of August 19th, 26 to order. Roll call, please. Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
Here.
Next item on the agenda is gateway options. Gateway redevelopment options. Staff report?
Yes, and Mayor, I think you had your mic off. Now it's.
Okay, so let me just say again, the next item on the agenda let's see. Yeah, the next item on the agenda is the Gateway redevelopment options. Staff report?
Okay. Each time, I think the mics are a little sensitive to if you pick them up and adjust them, it turns it off. So I just turned my mic off. Thanks. So you have in your packets the
Touchpad.
staff report and the presentation that Matt Edlin provided at the last meeting. He ran through that quite quickly because we were short on time. There's a lot of detail in there, but I think that really it boils down to a couple things. One is that he gave a lot of information about demographics and rents in the area, and that was related to the difficulty that he sees with the current financing options of making a market rate project pencil at this time. And by pencil, I mean that it's viable and it would create the rate of return that institutional investors are currently looking for this kind of investment. So the key question that he's posing to the agency is he would welcome the opportunity to continue working on the Gateway site on 2 tracks. One track where he would be exploring the potential of doing an affordable project. And sure, before I say the 2 tracks, I should say the thing that would be same in either track, he believes the community land trust purchase properties is a viable option on either track. So the question is more about the rental product. Would the rental product be focused on affordability? Be rent restricted and affordable with more traditional financing mechanisms. And he's proposed a mixed model where you'd have several different levels of income maximum, so it wouldn't all be homogeneous. But so that would be one track that he believes is viable, like with the current financing options. He would propose to continue working on that and exploring if it is possible, if something would change to make the more market-driven project workable. And so that's the key question that he's asking is, should he work on, if council is open or the agency is open to an affordable project, he would work on both tracks. If the agency is only really interested in doing a more market rate, I use the term workforce loosely, right? We know that people who are in affordable housing are in the workforce, but what's sometimes called attainable housing or workforce housing, closer to market rates, or the 80 to 100% of area median income, that he could do both. If the agency were to say, we're really only interested in the more market rate, the more attainable, the 80 to 100% of area median income, he would pause. He's still interested in exploring that, but given that he doesn't see it as viable right now with the market conditions, he doesn't want to keep spending money on site investigation. As I said, he's interested in continuing to work with us, but he would pause his work. And I think the goal, my goal for tonight is really to give you all an opportunity to flesh out what are the additional questions you've got for him in order to make that decision. I think one of them that came up, one of them is clear to me is, or was suggested, I think, at the council leadership group that we might want to explore, is how long a pause are you talking about? How often would he reevaluate? Another question would be what the exclusive negotiation agreement that we've got right now, or that we had, has actually expired. Edlin had the option to request an extension, in part because of I think his life. He's not requested that, but I think that's just more a reflection of Matt had surgery last night. Otherwise, he would be here virtually. But I think he is interested in extending it. But that would be another question, especially on the route where we're saying if the agency were to say we're only interested in the more attainable 80 to 100% AMI project, what would that mean? What kind of exclusive negotiation agreement would make sense in that kind of scenario? So I've talked at you quite a bit, and maybe I should stop and see if there are sort of clarification or other questions that staff can help with.
I have a quick question before I start taking questions. You mentioned earlier, and I didn't catch it all, something about a spectrum of housing types so that it wouldn't be all homogenized. Can you describe that a little bit more?
Sure. So both projects include townhouses that would be community land trust model townhomes. When I was saying not homogeneous, what I was saying is in the affordable model, the rental, the apartment building He would go after a model where instead of all those units being at only available to folks with 60% of area median income, you can blend and average a little bit. So you make some of those units available to folks with 30% of area median income, some available to folks with 50% of area median income, some with up to, I think, 70 or 80% of area median income.
You know, for those of us who have all participated in missing middle housing training and the various trainings that have been available to us, that sort of that mix of housing types and blending neighborhoods is a really favorable model, and I appreciate that extra description. The other last question I have, and then I'll hand it down, is I'm sensitive to the fact that the peer funding is on we have a short window, February of 2029, I believe is the end date that the project needs to be done. Would that only pertain to the infrastructure piece?
Correct. Yeah. We've kept really the redevelopment of Gateway and the infrastructure piece separate. And the infrastructure piece is not dependent really in any way on the redevelopment of the Gateway site moving forward on any particular time frame.
That's good to have that confirmed. Looking down, I saw Councilor Collet and then Councilor Penamrev, and I have to say, I can't see you at all, Eleanor. So if when you raise your hand, if you could put it out a little bit, I'm going to miss you. This is
Not like Elon.
yeah.
Good to go.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Alex, for the start to this discussion. Yeah, my question is on the timeline around the affordable, when you say, or when Matt Evelyn says that's something that could be worked on now, do we have like a rough breakground timeline of that and a rough completion timeline for that model versus the other one? It just sounds like check in every once in a while and
Right.
at some
right.
point it might happen, or given the way the economy's going, it might not happen for some undetermined amount of time.
Yes, that's correct. And then as far as the affordable timeline, the next round of consolidated funding applications going into Oregon Housing and Community Services, I believe, is this October. And you often apply a couple times to get there. So I suspect, I believe, and we should confirm this, what he'd work towards is getting an application in this year, probably not with the expectation that he necessarily gets it this year, but lining up the funding for the next cycle. So it would still be probably a couple years out, hopefully in construction in a year and a half, 2 years, completion 3 years. So that time, that's definitely something we'd want to confirm from it.
And just to follow up to that, that's funding coming from the state? And that's based on the biennium, or?
So the state, the state both allocates some of the federal tax credits and also some direct state subsidies. So they're trying to pull more and more funding into one cycle. And typically it is every year. It's not necessarily every year, but typically they do around each year.
Thank you.
Councilor Penamrev?
Thanks. So, our consultant's saying that option 2 is viable and option 1 can't promise, right?
Correct.
And I think one of the reasons I was leaning, favored the so-called workforce housing was because it, based on what we know, it was more guaranteed to meet a housing need that was missing, versus the subsidized affordable housing, which actually we may be talking about a much lower level of subsidized housing, or lower income level than before that people are having trouble filling. So I guess I'm liking, the spread that we're seeing in option 2, and I'm very inclined to it, but I'm wondering, is this price point, the income level, going to meet a need for people in our community, in our region.
So I think the demographic information he shared was very much that there are folks in that target market, to use market speak. I think one thing that we do want to confirm is that there is need, right? Just because there are folks who match that demographic doesn't necessarily mean that there are folks who are seeking housing. I suspect very strongly there's, I've spoken to Jason Elzey, not in the past 6 months, the Housing Authority of Jackson County director. And as many of you may be aware, there's in Portland, there are literally affordable housing units that are vacant because there are one term for it is the benefit cliff, right? There's a lot of product that gets built just to the federal HUD minimum, the 60%. So there's a lot of product that's just, you can't make more than 60% of area median income, but you need 50 or 55% of area median income in order to pay the rent that to use it. And certainly, post-fire, that was part of the challenges, and I think why it took a little while for Talent Mobile Estates to fully lease, I guess lease is a reasonable term, although maybe technically not correct. But I'm reading into your question, is that a challenge for the project?
That's my question. And so I guess it's a question for the consultant, or do you know?
I would want Matt to answer it as well, but I do think the blended model where he's offering different tiers and sort of averaging in order to meet the program requirements helps ameliorate that quite a bit.
Good.
But we should ask Matt to speak to that.
Can I follow up, Mayor?
Yes,
'Cause
yeah.
Since you mentioned Jason Elzey, so are we going to be hitting an income level or with the blended that will help people maybe move out of subsidized housing that they're in very low income into higher, or
I think some of the rents, some of the higher percentages, right, could do that. I think the community land trust product definitely does that. Yes.
okay, thank you.
And I was going to ask a clarifying question, but I think you may have answered it. And when you said the approach is looking at sort of averaging, is that really what it is, that they're averaging 60%?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Okay.
there are some fairly complicated formulas that I don't know, so it's not, but largely speaking, that's roughly what you're doing is you're saying, I've got 20 units at 30%, I've got 20 units at 50%, and then I can have 20 units at 80%. And as long as the average of those is lower than 60%. But I think there's some additional calculations that you have to do to justify.
I would like to ask you if you think there's the possibility of getting an analysis of that kind of average at some point, because I think if we're trying to address actual need, I think it leans higher rather than lower, based on experience we had here in Talent. It seems to me, and an analysis would flesh this out, where we're bulking this up around 60 and 70%. But obviously, if you're pushing some of that to 70%, you're going to have some lower than 60. And it just would be interesting to see if we are actually averaging it, would that calculation also match like real need?
So an example, and I imagine I'm sure there are other ways to do this, but the first few bullets under option 2 was one scenario he threw out where you focus artist housing on 30% of area median income. So 28 units targeted at very low income, and then do 56 units that are targeted at 70 to 80%. And he thinks that kind of mix would meet the 60% average, but I'm sure there are other scenarios as well.
Is there a way to kind of verify that? Because when I read those bullet points, I thought 28 was a little high.
As far as the number.
For a number,
Yeah.
yeah. I thought as a number of units, I thought
Right.
28 was a little high.
Yep.
And I just would wonder if during this process, the question I'm asking is not an answer to that question now, but is there a method of doing this average informed by actual need? I think is the question I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, I'm getting you. And I think it's related to the question that Council Member Penalroff was asking as well. So I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a great guess, but there is a way that, I mean, as we moved, if this was the choice that was made, as we moved forward, we'd be able to hone in on that.
Correct. You'd be refining that, doing more market research before you settled on exactly which.
All right. That's a thing, right? That's an actual thing. I'm glad to hear that. Councilor Coley.
Yeah, my question is on timeline of that specific market research and making this decision about what direction to go forward with. Is that something that could happen before we make this decision, or do we need to, especially if an application is due in October, do we need to act more quickly on setting a direction? Because I agree that understanding what the need is would be very helpful in making this decision, because it's easy enough for one of us to, go on Zillow or Craigslist or something, but it's not the same as whatever market study is going to be conducted.
Yeah, or even preliminary application. So that's a question that I'll ask Matt. I don't know if you can, at the application stage, say we want to do an averaging method and then perhaps change it later. So I'll find out what that timeline is, when he would need to commit to a specific formula.
And just speaking on timeline again, though, are you hoping for us to arrive at a decision tonight on whether it's market rate versus some mix of affordable?
I don't, my thought was that that'd be a big ask based on the information you've got right now. I think if you're comfortable making that decision, that would be great. But my expectation is probably at least another conversation before we give him an answer.
My hope, if I may, would be that we would at least also know what kind of wait time we're talking about before we make a decision, for the 80 to, is it 80 to 100 or 80 to 120? It doesn't matter.
I mean, I think it's, I'm not 100% sure. And I think there's some uncertainty about that.
Okay.
So yes, I think that's another question is,
what does that actual wait time look like?
and I'm pretty sure it's uncertain, but so I think the question is more like, how often would we revisit that question?
I mean, I think the only reason I'm asking it is not necessarily, I don't know that we're going to get assurance. I don't think we are either. But at least to have an answer, to have asked the question. And I mean, I feel like, at least from a due diligence standpoint, to just understand what he means by pause and make sure that we all understand what that means and what that level of uncertainty actually is.
Absolutely.
Because the project is not tied to the peer timeline is part of why I asked that question in the first place. Yeah. Councilor Penamroff?
Yeah, I was just going to express that, given the time, the thing about the timeline is, I think that waiting is not a good option. Uncertainty is not a good option. I think the need is now, and I would prefer taking a surer path even if there isn't time to do all the due diligence. I think this is a strong enough project just on its face to move forward with option two if that gets us making progress. I wouldn't want these things have to sit for years anyway. And the need is now. So I'm just feeling more the urgency rather than making sure this is exactly the sweetest spot we could get.
Even if it's just to what the next meeting, like what I heard is one more conversation. So.
Oh, yeah, I think.
As opposed to
that's
having it now?
fine, But if we're talking a feasibility study, a market study, studies, that's not going to happen by next meeting. So I think certainly a conversation to make sure, but based on the information I have, I just have a strong feeling that I could vote for option two tonight because I really want this to move forward.
I certainly would entertain your motion.
I don't want
And
to rush the rest of the council. I think we can wait another 2 weeks.
Okay.
I don't want to stress.
fair
people
enough. I
out.
mean, my assumption and all my questions were based on the fact that,
And they're
that we're
excellent.
talking about one more conversation. So, Counselor Collet.
I do share Counselor Panamraff's urgency in this. When I was thinking about timeline, one more meeting is fairly near term, but especially thinking about some potential pause and waiting for something, I'm fairly uninterested in that unless Matt has a crystal ball and it says that we'll pause for 6 months and we know we're going to start in 6 months. I just don't, he's not going to say that, but I would be happy to vote for this tonight just because of the history of this site and this project, and it's time to do something there and move forward on it. And I would hate to sit around and wait and then have to make the same exact decision in a year or two because nothing has changed or it's gotten worse. So as far as I know, like construction costs haven't been going down. They've just been going up. And anytime I have seen a public body wait on a project and come back to it in 2 years, 5 years, they're kicking themselves that they didn't do it for.
I don't think
Sometimes half the
anybody's
thought.
talking about 2 or 5 years, just for clarity's sake. Well, I think we're just talking about the next meeting, but again, and I want to clarify my comment, I'll entertain anybody's motion. So, Counselor Panamraff?
The other concern I have is that our developer hasn't signed up again with us, that exclusive. And I'm just wondering if they're waiting for some, sort of vote of confidence towards option two and rather than option one. I'm wondering if that would help that cement that relationship moving forward and make sure.
So just to be clear, the negotiation agreement is primarily for their protection, for the developer's protection, right? The negotiation agreement is primary there. So he knows that that it makes sense for him to spend money on phase two environmental work, hiring an architect, that kind of thing. And that we're not going to turn around and say, oh, we'd rather, do a project with Housing Authority of Jackson County. So I don't, that's just to say, I don't think we should read too much into the fact that he wasn't asking to extend it. At the end of the day, unless both parties are excited about extending an exclusive negotiation agreement, it's a waste of time. Because I'm saying, I'm overcomplicating it, but I do think it would be very helpful to have some clear understanding to extend it. So we've got shared understanding. And I think having an answer to this question would be really helpful to that and probably essential to do that. And then just the other thing is I wanted to agree with what you're saying, that last time the discussion came around to you is and the way I would put it is he's interested in both of these projects. He doesn't want to, whether it's a year from now or 18 months from now, come up with a model that he really thinks works, thinks he can finance, and it's the affordable model. And then for the agency to say, you know what, we're not really excited about that. So I think you all are tackling the question absolutely correctly. Like, would you still be excited about the project if it was affordable? And that's really what the question comes down to.
My comment is, first of all, I feel like some of my comments were recharacterized, and I want to make sure I'm not suggesting a feasibility study. I'm hoping for an analysis, if option 2 is chosen, for an analysis that shows us like what the mix is actually going to look like, so that we're actually meeting need, because we have experienced a really difficult time with previous affordable housing that I want to try to avoid if we can. And then also for the purpose of asking, like, what does a pause actually look like? I feel like it's important for us to know, for him to definitively say that there's no way for us to predict that before we move on to a model that we've already adopted. So I just don't want my comments recharacterized, and I want to make sure that that's clear. And then one thing also that I do have some concerns about is the fact that let's see, we're out of, it's not, we didn't have a contract with them, but there was an agreement that has expired as well. And have you had any indications from from Edlin at all that their interest is waning from re-engaging in, like, when I first heard that, which was earlier in the week, I was a little, or late last week, I was a little concerned that there might be some slippage.
No, not at all. As I was saying, I think those agreements, although it is binding, is a lot more akin to a letter of intent. It's really, Matt, so it was his option to extend it, right? So, if he were to extend it against our wishes, like, it doesn't really make it, there's not a lot of value in that. If we're not interested in doing a project that he has in mind, then we just wait 3 months before we started talking to somebody else. So, I may be overcomplicating it, but the short answer to your question is I think he's interested in re-upping the agreement. I think answering this question really makes sense before we extend it. So he and the agency are both on the same page about what's being explored.
Okay, that's good to hear. Any other comments? Yep, Councilor Collet?
Yeah, just since we're talking about timing, I think Rick, you could probably answer this, but can you speak to, I know there's some like zoning planning work that has to happen for the development on Gateway to move forward, and just how that fits into all this, and is that going to be a concern for timing or no?
No, I don't see that as a concern. Once the plan is developed, it's the normal process of it's just a normal process, because there's multiple options we could take to get as far as land use approval. We have a couple of avenues depending on a couple of decisions being made. This is one of them, because if it was 8% below AMI, that is an easier path compared to other paths, but nonetheless, there is a path forward. So no, I personally am not concerned with that affecting the project overall. That's a timeframe that's going to have to happen. But that is farther down the road. By that point, we will have land use documents in front of us, building documents in front of us. That's much farther down the road. I don't know if I'm getting to the heart of your question, though.
Yeah, that answers my question. And correct me if I'm wrong, did I hear you say that option 2 is not saying that option 1 isn't doable, but option 2 is an easier planning pathway? That's what you
Potentially,
said?
yes.
Potentially,
Yeah.
okay.
Because of some of these the CFEX stuff that we've done recently.
Okay.
Lower some review types if they're 80% more
Okay.
or 80% less.
And you're saying none of that would happen until you had plans in front of you, though?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I'm glad you brought it up, though. I think it's really helpful to be super clear about what that is. So because of the climate friendly and equitable communities, the CFA, the climate friendly area, we're required to allow affordable housing by right. So from a zoning standpoint, we could not require the commercial component. As owners of the site, we certainly can. But what he's proposing to provide that commercial, that activation under the affordable model is the live work spaces. There isn't the purely commercial type space that's in the option one. Part of the reason is that's part of what makes option one really hard is actually that commercial in the current market is actually harder to finance than the residential. But so I think that's important to understand that one, this affordable proposal does have a smaller commercial component in it than what you all originally looked at. It does have those live workspaces that I think would activate the frontages. The land use would drive commercial, but what the agency needs and wants to see can still. So I think that may be, that was an area that I think there may be a question that you all want to ask, or that we want to ask, or that I wanted to ask you, or to make sure that you understood, is the live work spaces is the most commercial piece of the affordable proposal as he put it in front of you.
Can I ask a question about that? So if you're talking about that on option one, is that also the case if it were the workforce housing as well? Is the commercial piece of it the reason why that is less viable, or is it literally they just can't, they're just not being able to get a funding stack together?
So
Financial approach.
yeah, it's both. So just where interest rates are overall, right, makes a project that has some significant amount of subsidy in it more viable. Period. But the straight commercial space is even more challenging to do on a market rate basis without subsidy currently than the housing project would be. So another way to say that is if option one didn't have the commercial component in it, it's probably closer to penciling.
That's interesting. All right. My last question is, I've gotten mixed messages over this over the years. My understanding when we were looking at 80 to 120 is that there would be some of that inventory would be deriving income for the city of Talent. My understanding for option two, the subsidized affordable housing, none of that housing would be deriving revenue for the city of Talent. Do I understand that correctly?
In both, I think, in both models, we're thinking about a land lease is a likely model. So the income for the city of Talent would be from a land lease in either model.
But not property tax revenue, is that correct? I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, that's sorry.
Said out loud.
That is correct. That the affordable project would very likely qualify sort of by right for property tax abatement.
Okay. I don't have any more questions. Councilor Penamara?
Yeah, I have two questions. One is I'm trying to picture what the work live for artists would look like to a passerby, whether it would have a commercial storefront feel or not. And then my second question really is whether the mayor would entertain a motion that along the lines of that the council is supportive of pursuing option two, if that turns out to be the most feasible. And whether that would answer that question for our builder.
So it would be, what he's described is similar to what was in the original proposal, like downstairs, roll-up door, maybe with a loft above. So,
Commercial downstairs.
yeah,
Yeah,
it would
okay.
look pretty commercial from
Great,
the street.
okay. Yeah, then I mean, I'm ready with the motion. That's okay.
Yep.
I move to direct staff to, inform Edlin that, the agency is supportive of, option 2 as well as option 1.
As well as what?
Option 1.
Can you repeat your motion?
Yeah, I move to direct staff to, inform Edlin that the agency is supportive of option 2 as well as option 1.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to direct staff to inform Edlin that the council supports,
Option 2.
supports, I thought you said something like
It
looking
is-
into or
Is supportive of,
exploring. Did you say exploring or something like that? Or did you just say supportive of?
I think I just said is supportive of.
Supportive of option 2 as well as option 1. Any further discussion? Counselor Penamroff.
Just to speak to my motion, I think, the conversation about, how well this fits the need and all of that analysis will continue, I'm expecting. But I think this is going to give the, it certainly helps my concern of urgency and conveying that urgency to Edlin that we do really want to move forward with this, and we're not going to wait for the perfect solution if the money isn't there. And yeah.
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Agency member Martin,
Yes.
agency member Greider,
Yes.
member Medina,
Yes.
member Penamro,
Yes.
member Calais.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is item number 3, fiscal year 2026-27 tour work plan. Staff report?
Thank you, Chair. So first, I just want to apologize that as I was thinking about this item, I realized that we really didn't do as much discussion about Tura as maybe we should have in goal setting last spring. So I wanted to, in part because of questions that the members of the agency have asked, and also in recognition of that, sort of start or go back perhaps to cover what we do want to make sure the Urban Renewal Agency gets to this year. So what the staff report lays out is, one, my working assumption is that it's pretty clear that we're working on this gateway sale. And it's also clear to me that we're working on the property swap on Talent Ave with Bonnie Morgan, which we've been making some good progress on over the past couple of weeks. And then the question to you all is, are there some capital projects and or other projects that you all would like to spend some time refining, exploring, or making sure, considering? I guess, yeah, there's a variety of questions depending upon the project. So, and I don't feel like I have a clear idea of what the entire universe is, maybe. So I think this is sort of starting a conversation. But some of the items that occur to me are, one, addressing the small gap in the sidewalk that's right where TID is closest to the roundabout. And I actually met with Chair Winters and some other folks at TID this morning. They're very open to and seem, understood why that made sense, and we're very amenable to it. I don't want to, this is relevant to our discussion later, so I should say it now. I also did explore a little bit the larger question of relocation of TID and where their thinking is about that right now. And what I heard was, I think very encouraging, and that they've been doing more and more work collaboratively with the other irrigation districts. And they really believe in the long term, it's in their interest to co-locate with Medford Irrigation District. So that both means, I think, more enthusiasm on their part, and it also expands the geographic area of what might work for them. Really, it's a little bit north of here and then continuing for another probably 5 miles. So, um, so apologies for the distraction, maybe, but I don't think it is a distraction, but it wasn't in the staff report, but I did want to share that conversation with you because it's relevant to several of our topics tonight. Another possible near-term capital project is something that Chair Ayers Flood has asked about, and that is the potential for reworking the promenade in a way that would provide multiple uses, including perhaps some additional parking in downtown. There are other projects that I know there are, are clear relevance to both the agency and council's interests in the work plan, and those include historic town hall. I think also the arts district proposal that you've all heard might make sense as a tour project. And finally, what I heard from the agency the last time we discussed it was an interest in re-exploring the possibility to establish a new plan. So I think in the time that we've got left, I'd love to hear if there are other completely different things that the agency would like brought forward for consideration as part of continuing this discussion. If there are items that I've shared that really y'all think fall off the table, items that you think, hey, you should be working on this tomorrow. And I think I'll stop there.
Any questions? Councilor Collet?
Your digression about TID is a good one. So I'm excited to hear that and probably have more questions later. I mentioned this to you, Alex, and I think I'll just voice it in a meeting too, but I think it's worth spending I don't think it's a lot of money, and you all can decide whether to contract it or have Public Works do it, but I think just some ongoing maintenance of the Gateway site as it transitions into its next life. I've personally been out there with volunteers and they have spent more time out there without me, just kind of beautifying the edges of it. And as it is the entrance to our town, and it sounds like it's going to be a construction site for a bit, hopefully sometime soon, and then maybe have a period of waiting and then be a construction site again. I think it's worthwhile to keep it looking nice and obviously keep, the fire hazard low, but just have the landscaping survive, I guess is all I'm saying. Yeah.
Any other comments? Okay.
I have one other, if that's okay.
Yep. Councilor Collet?
I think I expressed this when we talked about the Tura budget earlier this year, but I don't know if there's interest from other members or what is possible to be done with those 3 or 4 empty lots adjacent to TID and the entrance to town. I know that there's a small Tura-owned strip along them, and there's been discussion about if someone were to develop, whether or not that would be given to them or if there would be stipulations on that transfer. I don't know what possibilities there are with the land ownership on top of the remaining funds that we have, but working towards this development of those lots is an interest of mine and an interest of many people. A very common question in the community is what's happening with the pizza oven? It's not our pizza oven. It gets decorated. I think it's great, but it'd be nice to see something happen with those lots. So if there's any, I know there's been communication with the owners, but if there's any sort of monetary conversation or something like that that can move things forward, that would be great in my opinion.
Thanks for that suggestion.
Counselor Penamrev?
Yeah, my question is with regard to funding. I personally do believe there could be tax incremental funding in tourist future. But I'm also wondering what other sources of funding, is it really just going after grants like we are with Peer? Or is there anything else that we can look at to fund these capital projects that we so desperately need?
I think the answer is different depending upon which project that we're talking about. I mean, with historic town halls, certainly there are. And, and so the staff report's more about whether using TURF funds for matching funds for those grants. But yes. So yes, and it depends.
Thank you.
One of the things, if we could, I'm actually meeting with one member of the team that put together the last urban renewal plan that was developed in 22 on Friday to understand how much work it would be to sort of there's more work than dusted off, but to reevaluate the projects, I think, and are at a minimum is what we'd want, what you all would want to do. And one question I have about the timing of that is there is potential for a fair amount of agency turnover between now and January, and whether that's something that you all feel an urgency that we really want to sort of advance a discussion this fall, or is something that would make sense to sort of focus for the next body.
Counselor Penamrev?
Yeah, so I think my memory is probably not great about that plan, but it was born out of the fire. It was, all of that was very oriented towards recovery. And with the new council coming in, and I think it needs a fresh start. I would not feel bound to any of those projects. I think, there probably are some gems in there that we would want to pluck out, but I wouldn't want to start the analysis with that document. And I think it'd be much better to start with a big whiteboard and say, what can we do with this city as it is today, and move forward. And then, look back and see if there were some things we wanted to pull out.
Counselor Collet?
Yeah, I agree with that. Just looking through the past plan, and some of the projects have obviously been completed. Some of them have pieces of them that are in the works. Some of them maybe aren't relevant anymore to the agency. And I agree. I think the discussion has maybe changed, especially with us wanting to restarting the Economic Development Committee or Commission. I think those folks would have a lot of opinions about the potential of some funding and how it would be spent. I think the plan, just in my opinion, may be more focused on economic development than it was in the past. There was a lot of recovery work in there, rightfully so. But now we're watching, coming up on 6 years after how the recovery has unfolded, and we have a lot more information than we did in 2022. So I think it'd be, responsible to obviously look at the old plan as reference, and there's a few projects in there that still need to happen, but I think there's some new stuff or stuff that rises a little more to the surface. As far as timeline goes, I do like the idea of waiting for. I'm fine having those discussions with the existing body, but I think it's also not pushing the timeline to wait until January to do it. Just actually a question on that. When is the timeline for the Economic Development Commission to be seated and meeting? Like, where are we at in that process?
So we've done very little other than put a notice in the flash in this month. So my plan is to bring back, there was a tweak or two that needs to be made to the code. So my plan is to bring that back to you all, I think, in September. And so I'd hope to be bringing the tweaks to that code and also some sort of a slate of a first group to appoint to that body in September.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? All right. Sounds like you've got some good starting points there.
Absolutely.
So if there's nothing else, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting, give ourselves a break, and we'll come back at it in 3 minutes. Does that sound good?
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you.
All the way on. I don't know if they've explored that.